Listen closely. A gasp echoes in pure darkness. Her fingers scrape jade. Cold stone. No air. The Empress is awake, but she is not in her bed. She is lying inside a coffin, sealed, buried, forgotten, while her heart still beats. Every breath steals what little oxygen remains. Every second reminds her that beauty is never enough to escape the grave you created for others. Tonight, we descend into a nightmare where power becomes a tomb, and a queen discovers her death has only just begun. Before the coffin, before the darkness, before her own breathing betrayed her. She was the most desired woman in the empire, Zhao Feiyan, named after a swallow bird because she danced like one. Airborne, weightless, as if gravity bowed to her beauty. The first time she stepped foot in the palace, every gaze followed her like worship gone wrong. Silk curtains parted as she moved. Lantern flames leaned toward her. Even the emperor forgot how to blink. Han Dynasty, a ruler drowning in indulgence, sat upon his golden throne as if the world existed for his amusement. But when she danced, he learned fear, because desire is a weakness. And she made him weak. Music poured from jade flutes. Long sleeves fluttered like wings. Her feet barely kissed the ground before lifting again, as if flight was her birthright. She floated toward the emperor, eyes lowered, lips curved with a promise only he understood. Choose me. And lose yourself. He did. That night, Feiyan was summoned to the Phoenix Hall, the secret chamber where dreams become commands. The emperor's breath smelled of wine and longing. His fingers traced the line of her jaw as if memorizing sin. You will be my queen, he whispered. She bowed, though inside her heart rose like a star finally freed from the horizon. But the palace does not love beauty. It uses beauty and destroys those who forget that truth. Days turned into a symphony of luxury, gold phoenix pins tangled in her hair. Silks dyed in imperial red, wrapped her like fire too elegant to burn. Every morning servants painted her face as if preparing a goddess for worship. Every night poisonous whispers chased her into sleep, too ambitious, too perfect, too dangerous. Behind closed doors, court ladies sharpened envy into weapons, because in the palace a woman has two choices: be ignored or be hunted. Feiyan chose neither. She chose to rule. Her sister, Hopjuk, a mirror of her beauty but colder at the core, became her closest blade. Together they turned seduction into strategy. Smiles hid threats, touches masked traps. Perfume disguised poison, and the emperor, blinded by pleasure, gave them power no concubine should ever hold. When rivals rose, they fell quickly, faces pale on funeral mats before accusations could be spoken aloud. The Empress at that time, a gentle woman whose heart broke quietly, was the first to vanish. No wound, no struggle, just a tear in history where she used to exist. Feiyan stepped over that tear and into the phoenix crown. The coronation was drenched in silk and ceremony. Drums thundered, fireworks stained the sky red. The emperor smiled as if he had delivered paradise to his people. But beneath the celebration, fear stirred. Ministers muttered behind sleeves. Eunuchs exchanged glances too sharp to be innocent. Court ladies carried rumors like daggers under silk. They said, "A dancer sits on the throne. A swallow will bring ruin. Eyes too bright cannot be trusted." But Feiyan did not hear them. She only heard power singing in her veins. She ruled not with compassion, but with calculation. She knew the cruelest truth of the palace. Only those without children can be replaced. So she made sure no woman could give the emperor an heir. Rumors slithered through corridors like snakes made of sound. Dead babies in river reeds. Concubines clutching empty cradles. Nurses disappearing without screams. The emperor never questioned why no child survived. Love blinds harder than night, but every secret builds a shadow. Every death adds weight to the air. Every curse waits for its turn. And in the stillness before sleep, When the palace lanterns dimmed and music faded into memory, Feiyan sometimes felt the cold fingers of those mothers reaching from beneath the earth to touch the skin she prized so much. She would wake shaking, clutching her flawless face, her crown, her shield, because beauty was the only thing between her and retribution. Yet time loves no one, not even swallows. Her dancing slowed. Her eyes lost their shine, and whispers grew teeth. The emperor grows tired. She is fading. Her kingdom is built on graves. Feiyan stood before the mirror, watching youth slipping from her with each breath. Fear twisted inside her like a trapped animal she had killed to keep her beauty. Now beauty was abandoning her. That was when she realized what she possessed was never hers. The emperor, the crown, the palace, all borrowed, all temporary. One misstep and even a queen becomes prey. In the next room, someone laughed. A young concubine, newly favored. Feiyan's fists tightened. No, I will not be forgotten. I will not go down into the dark alone. She summoned her sister. She prepared her weapons. She planned her next move. But destiny was already moving faster. Because while Feiyan schemed to kill her future, the palace was digging her grave. Her coffin was waiting, not empty, waiting for her breath, waiting for her fear, waiting for her beauty to meet the one thing it could never outrun: death. Alive. Beauty is a crown, but in the palace, beauty is also a blade, and Zhao Feiyan held it at the throat of every woman who dared breathe too close to the emperor. The first to fear her were the ones who had once been adored. When she walked, perfume and silk followed, but behind her came the sound of futures collapsing, a glance too long, a smile too bright, a rumor of pregnancy. That was enough to disappear a woman from the world. No warnings, no justice. A bed left cold by morning. Servants learned to avoid meeting her eyes. Concubines bowed lower, hoping the floor would swallow them before she noticed their existence. Fear became the soundscape of the palace. Her sister, Zhao Hede, beautiful in the same way fire is, stood always at her side. If Feiyan was seduction, Hede was cruelty dressed in silk. A reflection with sharper edges. Men chase beauty, Hede whispered once, pinning a golden phoenix into her sister's hair. But they bow to fear. Let them bow to us, and they did. The emperor already drowning in desire. Let the sisters rewrite the rules of the palace. Whispers said they danced at night for him, robes slipping, breath trembling. While jealousy simmered behind closed doors, Feiyan watched, studying which concubine's smile lingered too long, which hand brushed too near the emperor's robe, which womb dared to hope for an heir. She acted quickly and always quietly, a cup of herbal tonic mixed just wrong, a midwife who never returned, a lullaby that ended too soon, cries silenced before they learned the world. The emperor never questioned. Love blinds more effectively than darkness. Feiyan became empress because she erased all obstacles. But victory changes a person. She began to crave not love, but worship. Not admiration, but fear. Every mirror praised her beauty. Every bow fed her hunger. Yet beneath the surface, an enemy she could not touch began its work. Time one night, while the emperor slept, Feiyan stared at herself. A slight hollowness beneath the eye, a wrinkle forming like a crack in jade. She ran to Hede, trembling. "Do you see it?" Feiyan whispered. Hede studied her long enough to wound, then smiled with poisoned kindness. "You must never allow the emperor to look at anyone else long enough to compare." Feiyan understood. If she could not keep beauty forever, she must make sure no other woman had enough to threaten hers. She ruled the harem like a famine. No flowers blossomed. No cradles rocked. Hope died before it formed a heartbeat. But when desire becomes routine, even a goddess can bore a king. The emperor's restless gaze fell upon a new concubine, young, frightened and foolishly radiant. Feiyan's smile froze. Later that night, as courtiers drank and laughed, Feiyan watched the Emperor laugh with another woman, a sound that once belonged only to her. The music grew louder. Her pulse grew faster. Her choice had already been made long before jealousy arrived. Someone screamed in the shadows. A body hit the floor. By morning, a fresh incense was lit in the palace, a scent thick enough to mask the odor of tragedy. Another, rival erased. Another ghost added to the Empress's crown. But ghosts have a way of pulling the living downward. Rumors thickened like storm. Clouds. Empress Feiyan brings ruin. No. Child survives in her presence. She dances atop graves. Courtiers stopped smiling. Ministers watched with sharpened suspicion. The Empress, once adored, now inspired only dread. And dread is another form of power, but one that always consumes its wielder first. Then came the turning point. During a night of endless revelry, the Emperor collapsed, wine staining his lips like dark silk peeling away from truth. Chaos erupted. Healers rushed. Prayers spilled from trembling mouths. But a man who has ignored his empire, for the warmth of a woman's arms does not earn mercy. He died with Feiyan gripping his hand. Shock and terror, twisting her perfect features into a mask she could not remove in an instant. Her kingdom turned to dust. All the women she silenced were suddenly heard. All the men she ignored found their tongues. All the hate she planted grew thorns. Officials who once bowed now pointed fingers. General after general accused her of poisoning lineage. Ministers demanded she pay for every child who never drew breath. Revenge has a long memory, and Feiyan had given it years to grow. The Empress's phoenix seal was stripped from her hands. The same hands that had executed her rise. Her robes were torn, her jewels taken, her name spat out like a curse. Dragon banners mourned the Emperor. No one mourned her. She pleaded, and not for mercy, for relevance. I am still beautiful, she cried to a silent court, but beauty, once her throne, now betrayed her more than any human could. Without the Emperor, Feiyan was just another woman the palace wanted to forget. Soldiers dragged her away as if removing a plague. The halls echoed with the fall of her footsteps, weaker, slower, as fear anchored her to the earth. Outside, a carriage waited, not gilded, not cushioned, not meant to carry a queen. It smelled of earth and finality. Feiyan's heart thrashed against her ribs. This was no exile. This was a burial, alive, and the dirt above her was already falling. She once believed that the Empire existed only to watch her dance, but now it stared with hungry eyes waiting to see her fall. In the days after the Emperor's death, something shifted in the palace corridors. No longer did servants scatter when she passed. They looked, they watched, they whispered. The Empress, the woman they once feared, was losing her crown and her invisibility. Fear was slipping away from their eyes and crawling into hers. Feiyan tried to hold on to dignity, but dignity is slippery when the ground beneath you becomes accusation. For years, she had ensured that no child could take her place. A pregnancy in the palace was a spark she hastily smothered. Even rumors of heirs disappeared before the moon could change shape. Some said she poisoned wombs with hidden herbs. Others said she strangled hope with her own hands when the lights went out. The truth did not matter. The anger did. Because an empire without heirs is an empire without a tomorrow, and the ministers wanted a tomorrow more than they wanted her beauty. Now, the ghosts of those unborn futures seemed to rise from the shadows. Every hallway she walked down felt haunted by the echo of tiny footsteps that never learned to walk. In the silence, she imagined faint cries just out of reach, cold fingers brushing her spine, hands tugging at the hem of her robe. The weight of lives she robbed, settling heavily onto her shoulders. She tried to shake off the feeling. She told herself ghosts do not exist, but guilt does, and guilt is far louder beneath the earth. Feiyan was placed under house arrest in a palace that once trembled for her. The doors that once swung open in worship now slammed shut in warning. She was forbidden to perform, forbidden to speak, forbidden to see her sister. Hated her blade. Her shield had been taken away first. Feiyan demanded answers, but silence answered back like a locked tomb. She was alone with only her reflection to reassure her she still mattered. But even the mirror was beginning to hesitate. One night, the moon poured silver light through a crack in the window. Feiyan pressed her face against the cold bars, hoping the stars still remembered her. That's when she heard it, a sound so faint it trembled like breath on glass. Tap, 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 from beneath the floorboards. She stepped back, heart pounding like a misplayed drum. The noise returned, scratching, clawing, insistent. Her blood turned to ice. It sounded like fingernails dragging down wood from the world below. She covered her ears, but the sound forced its way in. Tiny voices began to form inside it. Whimpers, cries, questions. Why us? Why did you stop us from being born? Why did you fear us? Her knees buckled. She pleaded with the dark, leave me alone. I did what I had to. I just wanted to live. But the dead have already learned how unfair life is. The next morning, 2 generals entered her chamber. Their armor gleamed as if polished for celebration. Empress Zhao Feiyan, they announced, though the title tasted sour in their mouths. The court has reached its verdict. She forced herself to stand as gracefully as when she danced. What crime? She demanded. One general spoke without emotion. The crime of taking heirs before heaven could. Feiyan's breath stopped. You accuse me of murder, she gasped. We accuse you of stealing the future, he corrected. There was no trial, no defense, no pity. That is the price when power abandons you. She was dragged through the palace she once ruled. The tiles she used to glide across now scraped at her knees. Her hairpins fell. Phoenixes crashing to earth. Every corridor seemed to echo with the laughter of those she cast aside. The throne room stood ahead, gargantuan, merciless. There the official decree was read. No execution, no blade, no poison. Her punishment would be silence. Let her death be unseen, the regent declared. Let the ground drink her beauty. Let darkness swallow her breath, buried, alive. Feiyan's heart kicked violently between her ribs. No. Her voice splintered. Not like that. The regent's gaze was colder than the jade she would soon meet. You have already buried so many. It is time you join them. They carried her away from the city toward a hidden burial ground reserved for those whose memory must be erased. Rain soaked the earth. A shroud pulled over daylight. Mud splashed onto her robes once too sacred to stain. Feiyan fought against the ropes. Not for dignity, but for air. Clouds gathered like witnesses called to watch. Lightning flashed, illuminating the coffin jade, perfect, beautiful. A tomb fit for a queen, she screamed, no, please, I will change, I will. The lid opened, inside, darkness shaped like eternity. She kicked, she clawed, she begged. Hands forced her down, her cheek pressed against the cold stone she once believed she deserved. The world narrowed to a coffin's width. Don't do this, she shrieked, voice cracking like porcelain. But dirt listens only to gravity, and gravity obeys judgment. Just before the lid sealed, a soldier whispered, "Beauty is not armor." Not here, then darkness slammed. Shut. The last thing she heard was the sound of shovels. The last thing she felt was her chest tightening. As the air began to disappear, via day, last thing she realized was the cruelest truth of all. Zhao Feiyan, who spent her life killing unborn children to protect her throne, would die their same death, buried, unfinished, forgotten, alive. Silence, then a pulse, her own. She did not expect to feel it again. Air burned inside her lungs, as if survival itself was a mistake. She opened her eyes, but darkness was so complete she wondered if her sight had been taken along with her freedom. Her forehead touched cold jade. Her knees pressed to her chest. Her arms trapped against her ribs, The coffin was a cage designed to keep a body beautiful even as it died. Feiyan screamed. The coffin did not echo. Sound died too quickly. When walls stood this close, she forced her hand upward. It slammed inches above her face. Pain burst through her knuckles. No space. No mercy. She scratched anyway. Her nails scraped jade with a shriek like bones cracking. No one heard. The earth heard, and it pressed down harder. Her breath came fast. Too fast. The more she gasped, the less air remained. Her heart pounded against the coffin walls as if trying to escape alone. "Help," she whispered. The word didn't travel. It stayed stuck in the same air she desperately needed. Dirt shifted overhead, a weight growing heavier with every heartbeat. She clawed again. The jade stayed cold, smooth, unforgiving. Her skin split. Warm blood smeared across stone. For the first time, blood felt like weakness and not power. She thought of the palace, the lanterns, the golden floors reflecting her dance, the way people bowed just to breathe near her, the way she commanded life and death with a glance. She pictured herself spinning, silk sleeves flying like wings that had never truly existed. She laughed. A broken sound. "What a fool," she whispered. Breath vanished faster. She set her palm flat above her face, feeling the coffin lid like a second skin. "Please," she begged, not knowing who she was begging. She had never prayed. Powerful women do not kneel, but queens buried alive will kneel to anything. She closed her eyes, though darkness made no difference, then waited for numbness. Instead, she heard it. Tiny noise, soft, persistent. Tap, tap, tap. Her chest tightened. Not outside, inside, inside. The darkness with her. She stopped breathing. Listened. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm of small fists hitting from the other side of life. Her arms prickled with horror. No, not here. Not now. She pressed both palms to her ears, but the tapping continued. It grew, scratching, whispering. Little sighs. "You killed us. You stole our breath. We want your air." Feiyan shook violently. "Stop. Please stop." But guilt has never listened to pleading. Her chest burned, and fire without flame. She tried to slow her breathing, fighting the panic, turning her lungs into knives. She tasted dirt, sweat, regret. Her throat tightened, dry as the graves she made for others. She remembered the concubine who cried for her baby, the way Feiyan had smiled to hide her boredom. She remembered the final kick of a dying infant against a blanket she ordered, carried, away. She remembered how easy it was to erase a future when your present feels invincible. Now the future was erasing her alive slowly. Her mind began to slip. Like silk sliding off cold skin, images swirled. Hader's smirk holding a vial of bitter herbs, the Emperor's head tilting back as he drank wine and worshipped. The sight of her, the crown placed on her hair while an Empress's corpse cooled beneath the palace floor. Boy's tiny shoe left behind, because his feet would never fill it. Again, all of them pressing against the jade, demanding space in the very coffin she had earned. Then the nightmare sharpened. She felt something move against her ankle. A brush, a curious nudge. She jerked something else at her shoulder. Her skin crawled. Imagined insects? Or the dead finding ways to touch the living? Her breath turned ragged. "Stop! Stop!" She slammed her head back, bone thudding against stone. Stars flashed behind her eyelids. The coffin seemed to shrink. Her fingers dug into her own arms, leaving crescent moons in her skin. She sobbed and choked on the sob. There was no room even for tears. The tapping stopped. Worse. It was replaced by silence that watched her. Her heartbeat thundered. A frantic animal trapped in a too small cage. She counted. Breaths 1, 2, 3. Too many, too few. Each one stole a fraction of what remained. She tried not to think about air. The thought of air made her need more air. The need made her panic. Panic made her breathe. Faster, faster, faster. No, stop, stop, stop. Her body no longer listened. Lungs demanded what the coffin would not give. Her vision blurred, though she could not see. Warmth spread through. Her limbs like sleep creeping in. Her hands went numb. Her heartbeat slowed. The loud thud softening into nothingness. Maybe this was mercy. Maybe this was justice. Maybe this was simply the end. She exhaled, a final protest against the dark. The tapping returned, faint, mocking not from the coffin, from inside her skull. A reminder from her own pulse. You are not dead yet. Not yet. And the nightmare is nowhere near finished. Above the coffin the storm passed. The mud settled. The world forgot. But the world does not forget a woman who once danced on the pulse of an empire. At first the palace celebrated. Justice, they called it. The regent drank wine, pleased that silence had finally replaced beauty. Ministers nodded as if history had corrected itself. Concubines slept easier, though nightmares still visited in the shape of silk sleeves fluttering like wings cut too soon. And the soldiers, they laughed as they rode back through the palace. Gates, unaware that the ground behind them was beginning to move. Inside the coffin, Feiyan forced herself to breathe small. Tiny sips of air that tasted like fear and damp stone. Her fingers traced the jade wall, mapping her prison as though knowledge alone could create escape. Her nails cracked. Her skin tore. Blood became her ink. Not like this, she whispered. I will not die like this. But the coffin did not care. The air did not care. Death cared least of all. Night fell, and the guards outside the burial ground heard something. A thud. Soft, rhythmic. One guard paused mid-breath. Did you hear? His partner glared. Don't be foolish, the dead don't knock, but the sound came again. A heartbeat felt through soil. Thud. 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 The younger guard's face drained of color. What if she's still... The order was to bury her, the older one snapped, not to listen. He turned away, yet the younger guard continued listening, to the earth breathing where it should not. He remembered her eyes as the lid closed. Wild. Desperate. Alive. The weight of that memory pressed on his chest. He wanted to dig. He wanted to run. He did neither. Fear paralyzed him as effectively as dirt paralyzed her. Meanwhile, the palace turned its malice to her sister. Zhao Feiyan was dragged into the throne hall, kicking, spitting venom. You fools think the dead stay buried? She hissed. She will return. She will dance on your graves. The regent smiled. Perhaps you will greet her first. They tied a silk ribbon around her throat, the softest execution. She died, staring upward, as if expecting Feiyan to burst from the ground in the next breath. Her body was thrown into a pit, unnamed, unmarked. Two sisters, once worshipped like divine swallows, now waiting beneath dirt like worms too stubborn to rot. Back beneath the earth, Feiyan's mind frayed at the edges. She began to hear voices that might not exist. You thought you were chosen. You thought beauty made you immune. You thought you could steal the future. Now the future steals you. She pressed both palms to the coffin lid, not to escape anymore, but to push away the dead clawing at her thoughts. Her lips cracked. She licked blood just to keep them wet. Darkness thickened. Her heart slowed. She wondered if her reflection was dying too. No mirror, no witness, no legacy. The earth shifted, and she slipped sideways. Her shoulder slammed stone. Pain jolted her awake, alive again. Alive still. The cruelest continuation. Above ground, officials grew uneasy. Whispers circulated. The burial was rushed. She was breathing when they sealed it. Maybe heaven is not satisfied. Late one night, a minister approached the regent. What if she lives? The regent did not look up from his scroll. "If she lives," he said, "the worms will handle what we lacked courage to finish." The minister swallowed. "And if she returns?" The regent's quill paused. He closed his eyes. "She will not return because no one will dig her up." It was a prayer pretending to be confidence. Time became a cruel blur for Feiyan. Minutes or hours, she could not tell. Sleep whispered with silver lies. "Just close your eyes. You won't feel the walls. You won't need to breathe." But she fought, not because she believed in saving herself, but because she could not accept that her story, her notorious glittering story, would end unseen. She began to hum a melody she once danced to. Her voice trembled, her breath stuttered, but she hummed anyway. Because silence was death's language, and she refused to speak it, not yet. Then, a new sound, muffled, far away. Footsteps? She froze. The earth vibrated slightly. Dirt trickled along the coffin seams. She couldn't stop the hope from stabbing her heart. "Here," she rasped, voice barely sound. "Here." She knocked. Weak taps that cost her more air than she could spare. Her ears strained. Did the footsteps pause? Did someone hear? Or was hope just another ghost she'd created to torment? Herself, above. The younger guard stood at the grave's edge, unable to ignore the dread in his bones. "What if," he whispered. The older guard grabbed his arm. "If she comes back, she will bury us." They both stepped away. Cowards in uniform. Feiyan kept knocking long after they left, every tap a plea, every plea a nail in her own coffin. The sound faded. Her arms fell heavy. Air refused to return. Her thoughts slowed, turning into clouds she could not hold. She whispered into the shrinking darkness, "Someone, remember me." But memory, like breath, was running out. Her head tilted back. Her eyes fluttered closed. For the first time she accepted the quiet. Maybe the dead are not meant to rise. Maybe the swallowed are not meant to be spit back out. Maybe this was always how her story would end, not with applause, but with soil. Not beneath light, but beneath judgment. Not as a queen, but as a warning. Zhao Feiyan, the swallow who flew too close to the throne, now just a quiet flutter in a coffin too small for a life so loud. There comes a moment when even terror must rest. Feiyan lay still inside the Jade Coffin, a bird whose wings had finally understood walls. Her lungs drank the thinning air like a sinner drinking mercy. Every inhale hurt. Every exhale cost. She tried to remember what free breathing once felt like, but memory is the first thing death steals. Her hands slipped from the coffin lid. Her fingers curled like petals closing for night. The tapping beneath her skin slowed. Tap, tap. Her own heart was deserting her. Feiyan's head rolled to the side, cheek pressing into the cold jade bed that would become her final audience. Darkness wrapped around her, a velvet shroud stitched from silence. No lanterns. No silk, no adoration, just bone and stone and soil. A queen reduced to air, and air reduced to not enough. Her thoughts drifted to her first night in the palace. Music, praise, eyes that worshipped. She recalled the Emperor's smile when she danced. How she believed it meant she mattered. But a smile is not armor. It is only an invitation for knives. Her breath fluttered. A butterfly caught in a closing fist. Death waited politely, as if amused by how hard she tried to ignore him. Feiyan whispered into the dark, "I am still beautiful." But even she could hear the lie cracking. Beauty dies first. Breath dies next. Memory follows. She shut her eyes. She saw the faces of the children she never allowed to become real, not accusing. Not angry, just staring. Silent questions too sharp to answer. Her skin prickled. as though their tiny hands were reaching through stone to feel whether she was sorry. She wasn't sure. She had never learned how to regret, but regret was learning her. A voice, her own or something older, rose in the darkness. "Every dance has an end," she laughed weakly, a final applause inside her chest. Then, a sound. Faint. Impossible. Metal? Stone shifting. She held her breath as if breath were currency she could save. Silence. Her hope collapsed again. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe the dead invent doorways to soften the ceiling of the tomb. She exhaled. A surrender disguised as air. Her eyelids fluttered. Curtains closing above. The younger guard returned to the grave. His conscience had grown, heavier than his orders. His hands shook as he gripped a shovel. He dug. Just once below, Feiyan heard it. A grain of soil, falling like a star. Her eyes flew open. Her lungs demanded a future they didn't believe in. She angled her body. Barely. Toward where hope might be. "Here," she croaked. "Here." Her voice cracked into pieces. She slammed her shoulder against the lid. Weak, but not defeated. The coffin answered with a dull thud. Above, the guard froze. He stared at the dirt. Sweat dripped down his spine. "Impossible," he murmured. But impossible had become truth. Another thud. Closer. He raised the shovel again. His heart raced. He would save her. He would... "No," a cold voice commanded. The older guard returned. "Sword drawn. She must die," he hissed. "Or she will kill us all." He grabbed the shovel, threw it aside. The younger guard backed away, horror twisting his face. "But she's still alive. So were the children she murdered." Spit flew from the older man's mouth, his voice cracked. "Leave her to the worms." The younger guard hesitated, just long enough for hope to taste real. Then he turned and ran, not toward her, away, below. Feiyan heard footsteps leaving. Her chest fell, her hands dropped. No rescue, no chance, no audience. Once again, she was alone with herself. The final punishment. Her breaths came slower now, each one a thread fraying. She felt warmth leaking from her fingers, escaping her body like a secret she no longer needed. The tapping beneath her ribs weakened. Her heartbeat forgot its rhythm. She smiled bitterly. "So," she whispered, "this is how a legend ends." Her eyelids lowered, soft as closing silk. Her lips parted, not in fear, but acceptance. She released her final breath like a dancer bowing after a flawless performance, and the darkness, at last, took her in. Hours passed, or days. The coffin remained still. The earth became her stage curtain. Silence settled where vanity once roared, but the dead do not always stay quiet. In the palace, servants dreamt of a woman in red silk scratching at their windows. Ministers woke with the taste of dirt in their mouths, and every spring, when swallows returned to the capital, they circled the palace rooftops, searching, calling, as if waiting for their queen of flight to rise again. She never did, but her story did, buried alive. Beauty suffocating beneath the empire it tried to rule, a nightmare inside a jade coffin, a warning sharper than the blade she never carried. When beauty becomes power, power demands its pound of flesh. Zhao Feiyan, once the lightest dancer under heaven, remains the heaviest secret beneath the earth. And if you listen closely on the darkest nights, you might still hear a single tap from beneath the soil asking, "Did you forget me?" Sleep comes differently for those the world tries to forget. Tonight, we leave the darkness of the coffin behind, but we keep the whisper of its lesson. Zhao Feiyan once believed she could outrun the earth itself, that beauty could float forever above jealousy and power and time. But the ground remembers. And it waits. She danced through palaces as if her feet never needed to touch the floor. She shaped destiny with a smile. She silenced every future but her own. Yet in the end, her lungs learned what every heart must. We all return to silence. We all return to the same small space beneath the sky. Close your eyes now. Feel the weight of the world soften, like dirt settling gently over what no longer struggles. Her story, sharp and cruel by day, now drifts into quiet. The swallows rest their wings. The jade no longer holds breath, and the palace turns away its gaze, if she still wanders anywhere. It is not in the halls of Empress or the gardens she once ruled. It is in the hush just before you fall asleep. That thin, fragile second when breathing slows and the world forgets your name for a while. Let that hush hold you, not as punishment but as peace. Rest now. The night is deep and the ground is soft. Tomorrow the world will rise again, but for this moment, you are safe. Good night.